Sometimes executives and high performing professionals tell me something like this. Mon, I feel like something about my insurance might not be right, but I can't quite put my finger on it. If you've ever had that thought, you're not alone. Insurance decisions feel hard, even for very smart people. And the reason usually has nothing to do with intelligence. In this video, I want to unpack why these decisions feel uncomfortable for so many professionals and why that discomfort is actually very normal. Because once you understand where that feeling comes from, the hesitation starts to make a lot more sense. One pattern I see very often is a quiet fear of regret. People worry that maybe they bought the wrong thing, but at the same time, they don't know what they don't know. So there's this lingering question in the background: what if there was something better out there? But since they're not sure what that better option actually looks like, they hesitate. And when the stakes involve your family, your health, and your long term security, hesitation feels safer than making another decision you might regret. So instead of revisiting their insurance decisions, many people simply leave things as they are. Not because they're confident everything is optimal, but because uncertainty makes change feel risky. Another thing I notice with high earners is that many naturally gravitate toward the most expensive option. And that instinct is understandable. In many areas of life, paying more usually does mean you get more. Like a more expensive car usually gives you more features, more comfort, more luxury. So the assumption becomes, if this insurance plan is more expensive, it must be better. But insurance doesn't really work that way. Insurance is one of those areas where less can actually be more. The plans that look the most impressive on paper often come with extra layers of features and riders and investment components, but also higher charges and heavier costs. So paying more doesn't automatically mean you're getting more value. And that's where confusion often begins. Another subtle pattern I see is that many people simply choose from the options that were presented to them. Not necessarily the best option, just the available option. And once a particular plan is framed as the premium solution, it's very easy to assume that's the one you should take, especially if no meaningful comparison was ever laid out. So the decision feels informed at the time, but years later, when you look back at the policies you've accumulated, you start to wonder whether the choices were ever really compared side by side. There's another layer that makes this even harder to revisit. Sometimes a friend sold the policy, sometimes it's a relative. And here in the Philippines, that dynamic is very real. Saying no can feel uncomfortable because the relationship is involved. So instead of reviewing the decision objectively, people often leave things untouched. There's also loyalty to institutions. If the policy came from a large insurance company you've known and trusted for years, or from a bank where you've had a long relationship, the tendency is to trust that the recommendation must already be sound. Again, that instinct is completely understandable. But trust in a relationship or an institution doesn't automatically mean the policies you accumulated over time were designed to work well together. There's also a practical reality. Most high earners are busy. Insurance decisions require mental space and the kind of attention most professionals reserve for things that feel urgent. But insurance rarely feels urgent. Nothing appears broken. Premiums are being paid, the policies are there. So, over time, more and more insurance policies get added at different stages of life. Each one may have made sense at the moment it was purchased, but without stepping back to look at how all the policies fit together, it becomes harder and harder to evaluate the overall picture. And because of that, many people never realize how much their insurance is actually costing them in the long run. When you step back and look at all of this together, the hesitation starts to make sense. You have high stakes, limited visibility, and decisions that feel difficult to reverse. When those things combine, the safest instinct is often to leave things alone. And that doesn't mean your insurance decisions were careless. It usually just means the environment you are making decisions in didn't make it easy to see the full picture clearly. Now, as you're listening to this, you might already be thinking about your own policies. And if you'd like a simple way to review them step by step, we actually put together something called the Insider's Insurance Audit Playbook. If you comment audit below, we'll share the guide with you for free so you can go through your policies calmly and see how everything fits together. Anyway, going back to the bigger picture. When hesitation meets uncertainty, something predictable tends to happen. Instead of redesigning the overall setup, people gradually add more and more insurance policies over time. Each new policy solves a problem in that moment, but without stepping back to look at how everything fits together, the overall design of your protection becomes harder to understand, and that's where inefficiencies usually begin to hide. If your insurance currently feels unclear, that doesn't mean you failed. It usually just means no one ever stepped back and explained how all the pieces fit together. And to that I say, congratulations, you're normal. This is actually one of the most common things I see when I review policies for high earners. And when hesitation leads to people to end up with more insurance policies than they really need, it becomes surprisingly easy to pay far more than they realize. In the next video, I'll show you a pattern I often see among high earners, and the numbers can be quite eye-opening. Once you see it, you'll never look at insurance the same way again. I'll see you in the next episode.